The sky above Berlin, late afternoon, 8 March 1945. A bitter wind cuts across the Tiergarten Flak Tower, whipping the gray wool coats of the teenage girls stationed there. Snowflakes swirl between the concrete octagons. Their breath hangs white in the air. Fingers numb on the cold metal of the predictor dials. The radar operator's voice crackles through the headphones. American bombers, large formation, heading 240, height 7,000 meters. The girls, some barely 17, tighten the chin straps of their steel helmets and swing the long barrels of the 12.8-centimeter Flak 40 toward the western horizon. They have drilled for this moment since 1943. They know the sequence by heart. Fuse set, shell rammed, tower transverse, elevation, fire. They had been told the Amis come only to burn cities and murder children. They had been told their duty was sacred. And then the first silver specks appear, glinting like shards of ice against the pale sun. 400 B-17s in perfect combat boxes, escorted now by the long, lean shapes of P-51 Mustangs riding shotgun high into the rear. The flak batteries open in thunder. Black puffs blossom across the sky, a lethal garden blooming in seconds. Shell cases clatter onto the concrete platform, ringing like church bells. Cordite stings the throat. The girls work in frantic rhythm, sweat freezing beneath their uniforms, ears ringing with the endless concussion. But something is wrong. The bombers do not release. No stick of 500-pounders tumbles earthward. No whistle of death grows louder. Instead, from the bellies of the trailing fortresses, small objects detach, thousands upon thousands, fluttering down like dark snow. They spin, catching the light. They are not bombs. They are Hershey bars, wrapped in silver foil, tied with red, white, and blue ribbons. One lands on the parapet not 3 meters from a girl named Elizabeth S., 17 years and 4 months old, member of the Luftwaffenhelferin since the summer of 1944. The bar strikes the concrete with a soft metallic clink and lies there, impossibly bright against the soot-stained tower. For a moment, the guns keep firing, the automatic rhythm of war refusing to pause. Then another bar lands. Then 10. Then hundreds. The sky rains chocolate. The first sob is almost lost beneath the roar of the 128s. Then another. Then a wave of them. Thin, high, incredulous, rising from every battery position on the tower. The guns fall silent one by one. Crew commanders scream orders that are no longer obeyed. Girls drop to their knees in the spent cartridge cases, gathering the bars with shaking hands, pressing the cold foil to their cheeks as though it might vanish. Some tear the wrappers with their teeth, tasting real sugar for the first time in years. Others simply hold the bars and weep without sound, tears cutting channels through the powder black on their faces. This was the moment the myth cracked open. To understand why chocolate, of all things, could break the will of an entire generation of German youth, one must return to the winter of 1943-44, when the Reich first summoned its daughters to the guns. The Luftwaffe was bleeding pilots faster than the training schools could replace them. Every able-bodied man under 45 had long since been drafted into the infantry or the factories. In desperation, a high command issued the decree. Schoolgirls in their final 2 years would be conscripted as Flakhelferin, radar plotters, searchlight operators, ammunition bearers. By early 1945, more than 100,000 teenage girls crewed the heavy batteries, ringing every major city. They wore the same gray uniforms as the boys, took the same oaths, stood the same watches through the long nights of phosphorus and fire. They had been raised on a diet of propaganda so total that reality itself seemed malleable. Goebbels' loudspeakers told them the Americans were gangsters and Jews who dropped bombs on kindergartens for sport. Their rations had shrunk to 1,800 calories a day, sometimes less. Turnip soup, sawdust bread, acorn coffee. Sugar was a memory from childhood. Real chocolate had vanished from the Reich in 1940. When the girls dreamed, they dreamed of cake. And now, the sky was giving it back. Operation Clarion, 22nd, 23rd February 1945, had been the strategic harbinger. The 8th Air Force, under the new command of Major General Doolittle, shifted from precision daylight raids on industrial targets to a deliberate campaign of psychological dislocation. The plan, approved personally by General Eisenhower, was simple and brutal. Demonstrate to the German people that Allied aircraft could roam the Reich at will, that the Luftwaffe no longer existed as a serious force, that the war was already lost. Part of that demonstration was the deliberate dropping of propaganda leaflets by the million. But on 8 March, in the Berlin sector, someone in the 91st Bomb Group added a refinement. Small care packages assembled by Red Cross volunteers in East Anglia, each containing 3 Hershey tropical bars, the same heat-resistant chocolate issued to GIs in the Pacific, wrapped with a handwritten note in German, "For die Kinder," for the children. The official after-action report of the 91st simply noted morale leaflets dispensed as planned, additional 1,800 pounds confectionery released over flak positions. The tonnage was trivial, a rounding error beside the 10,000 tons of high explosive dropped elsewhere that day. Yet the effect was seismic. On the Zoo Tower, Oberleutnant Heinrich R., battery commander, watched his crew collapse in hysterics. His logbook entry that evening reads in a handwriting that trembles across the page, 0845 to 0910 hours. Enemy aircraft over city. No bombs observed. Crews ceased fire upon distribution of chocolate confectionery from B-17 aircraft. Discipline temporarily lost. Girls weeping uncontrollably. Have confiscated remaining bars for safekeeping and morale investigation. Request urgent guidance. No guidance was forthcoming. The High Command in Potsdam had more pressing concerns. The Red Army was already across the Oder. But the damage was irreversible. Word spread faster than any leaflet. By nightfall, every flak tower in Greater Berlin knew. Girls smuggled bars beneath their tunics, hide them in ammunition crates, trade a single square for a week's worth of cigarettes. Some refused to believe the chocolate was real until they tasted it. Rich, creamy, impossibly sweet, nothing like the ersatz blocks of saccharin and beet sugar they had known for 5 years. Others read the tiny notes again and again. "We are coming to free you, not to kill you." The psychological fracture was complete. In the weeks that followed, absenteeism among the flak Helferines soared. Girls reported sick with mysterious stomach ailments that no doctor could diagnose. Some simply walked away from their batteries and melted into the streams of refugees heading west. Court-martial records from March and April 1945 show a sharp spike in desertion charges against female auxiliaries, charges that were quietly dropped when no officer could bear to shoot a child for the crime of eating chocolate. The Hershey bar became the recurring symbol, the forbidden fruit that proved the propaganda a lie. In the ruined cellars of Berlin that spring, teenagers who had once saluted portraits of the Führer now passed a single bar from hand to hand like contraband communion. Each square melted on the tongue carried a taste of another world, a world where factories still produce sweetness instead of death, where children were not fed into the furnace of total war, where the sky could rain gifts instead of fire. By May 1, 1945, when the red flag rose over the Reichstag, many of those same girls stood in the rubble and watched without regret. They had seen the future drop from the bellies of silver bombers, wrapped in foil bright as hope. The war had ended for them weeks earlier, on a cold March afternoon when the heavens opened and gave them back their childhood, one small bar at a time. And somewhere in a quiet moment after the guns finally stopped, a girl named Elizabeth pressed the last square of chocolate to her lips, closed her eyes, and understood that freedom is not an idea imposed by bayonets. Sometimes it arrives gently, no louder than foil on concrete, tasting of cocoa and distant orchards where no one is afraid. That is the deeper truth the Reich could never bomb away. Abundance is the most subversive weapon of all. When people have tasted it, even once, they will never again settle for the thin gruel of tyranny. A single Hershey bar dropped from 30,000 feet weighed less than 2 ounces, yet it carried within it the irresistible gravity of a different way of life. In the end, the Thousand-Year Reich was not defeated only by tanks and artillery and the endless weight of Soviet manpower. It was also brought down by the quiet rebellion of hungry children who discovered on the coldest day of the coldest winter of the war that the enemy they had been taught to hate had remembered what it meant to be human.
The sky had spoken, and the girls, sobbing amid the spent shell cases, finally listened.